Everyone was telling me like, oh no, you cannot do that. CFDA is gonna hate you. Anna Wintour is not gonna have you in her office or whatever. I did it anyway.
In 2015, a son of immigrants from California's Central Valley had an idea. After nearly 2 decades working his way up in the fashion industry, Willy Chavarria founded his eponymous brand with a mission to affect change through clothing.
When I started my brand, I was already 40. I wanted to make something that actually means something.
That passion led to working with artists such as Kendrick Lamar, Balvin, and Charli XCX. But it wasn't always easy.
As difficult as you think it's gonna be, multiply that by 20. It's so fucking hard.
With the business scaling, new and bigger problems arose.
The more you grow, the more money you need.
Despite the challenges facing the fashion industry as a whole and the shifting political tides, Chavarria's mission remains resolute.
I want my brand to be big enough to touch everybody. People that can afford to dress luxury and the people that shop at the outlets. Because I believe everybody has the right to wear badass clothes.
Chavarria's next chapter includes a vision that expands beyond clothing. If you could change one thing about the fashion industry tomorrow, what would that be?
Well, that's a good question because...
And it all started with one idea. Are we good to go? All right. Willy, welcome to Idea Generation.
Thank you, Noah.
Idea Generation is a show that is about sort of navigating the intersection of art and commerce, creativity and industry. And to that end, I'm curious if you could Thanos snap and change one thing about the fashion industry tomorrow, what would that be?
Well, that's a good question because one of my missions in this industry is to change it. I think that for the past few decades, fashion has sold this idea of you need to purchase this item because you want to look like you are somebody that makes you feel better about yourself. And I really hope to change the industry to make us see ourselves and see ourselves as good.
You've talked a lot about the importance of representation, and obviously that plays out in most straightforwardly seeing people that look like yourself doing certain things. Who was around you in the early part of your life that opened your eyes to the possibilities of a career in the creative arts?
What's interesting is in my younger years, where I was growing up around my family in Huron, California, there wasn't really the notion of doing anything in the creative arts. It was very, very humble and, very family oriented. It was the church, it was working, hard work. There weren't like fashion magazines, or there was not even like People magazine, or, it wasn't that kind of environment. But as I got older and made friends in high school, I had friends that were inspirational to me and friends that knew about things that I had no idea about, like techno and new wave and, music coming out of London or New York, like all of these things that were mind-blowing to me, and magazines and fashion. Like all of this was so new to me, and I was just like in it. I was sucked up into it. I just fell in love. And I had my own escapism growing up because for many reasons, being queer, being half white, I was a little bit on the outsides of my environment. And in retrospect, it's great because it made me a real observer, and it made me very visual. It also made me empathetic to feeling like how other people felt because I was very studied. And then, I can't even believe this, if you can believe this, MTV was invented. MTV came out, and that was like, what the fuck? It was the coolest thing ever. There were like 5 videos that just played over and over all day. And it was like music and video and fashion. And it was so incredible. It was like we were all hooked. Me and all the other kids that were like, oh my God, we gotta run home and watch these 5 videos over and over. And I remember just thinking, after watching MTV, I would just think in video form all the time. Like everything was a video. Everything, oh, this would be such a cool video, this little setup here with this in the middle. Everything was video. And I think that is when my eyes were like open to something creative.
Obviously, so much Mexican American culture influences the line. Your mother is Irish.
Irish.
And I ask this not because my last name is Callahan, but do you see ways in which that part of your family lineage come into your work?
Oh man, definitely. I'm equal parts my mother's side of the family as my father's side. The way I grew up, to make a long story short, is after desegregation happened, the Mexican school and the white school got put together. That's how my parents met. And then that's how I came about. So at that time, there was no abortion, and it was very Catholic family, religious family on both sides. So my young mother moved in with my father's family. So I grew up in a Mexican household, and my mother learned to speak Spanish, and my mother woke up at 4 a.m. every day and made the tacos for the guys going out to work. And I was very much a part of that family. So I'm very, very close to that. And I think that those influences and that passion and that love is really, really instilled in me. Also, the fact that my parents and my family were very close to the civil rights movement. Huge fans of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta and John F. Kennedy. I was very much raised to believe in the rights of people. So as I started my business, I wanted to make sure that those values were incorporated into my work. So I know that it's more important to raise up brown and black people than it is white people, because white people already have a lot of privileges. So that has been a focus for me. And being brown myself has enabled me to have that voice. And I won't deny that being half white has enabled me to also get into doors that I might not be able to, but it's allowed me to open the doors for others. The most important idea I ever had was to utilize my talents to tap into what I felt truly valuable, which was to raise awareness for social issues and to raise people up that normally get the shit end of the stick.
You got your start at Joe Boxer as an intern, and then you were able to parlay that into being a designer there. How did you finesse that transition?
Well, I was very, very motivated. And I was working in the stock room, packing and shipping orders, and I knew, well, actually it was in that moment that I was kind of realizing, okay, this is really cool. This is a cool way to make money. Like, I can make money doing this kind of clothes thing. So I started to make friends with the designers and started to really elementary stuff, like making my own designs and, textile designs and prints and patterns and presenting it to them. And just like hand-drawn stuff, and being really persistent and also working my ass off, you know, like being willing to work extra hours to like clean up the design studio or like empty ashtrays because people smoked at that time in the office in I don't know if it was legal, but they did. But that persistency kind of got me recognized with the designers, and then they let me in to help around the design studio, and then eventually I was like designing. And I thank Nick Graham, the owner of Joe Boxer, for that, who's now a good friend, and you know, the people that were there at the time. I would say every break I got was based on my tenacity and working my ass off. So even at Ralph Lauren, the way I got that job is I was working for a cycling apparel company, and Ralph Lauren launched their RLX line, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the first to do like athletic and fashion together. That and Doechii with Y3. So they had contracted out with this cycling apparel company that I was working for to do the cycling apparel for RLX. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I gotta get on that. At the time I was like Polo Sport cap, Streetwear. I was getting all my Polo Sport at Marshall's. And yeah, I was super into it. I was like, I gotta have this account. So I started working with Ralph Lauren, the company, long distance, and then just like busting my ass, giving them stuff. And then they were like, okay, this guy's good, let's hire him. So they brought me to New York from California.
If you could time travel back to 2015 in the moments leading up to launching the brand and impart any piece of information, what would be the most important thing that you would share with yourself?
Well, I've heard this one before, but it's true. As difficult as you think it's gonna be, multiply that by 20, because it's so fucking hard. You have got to have the tenacity, the passion, the drive, the will, the ability to work, you know, days on end in order to get the job done. And I think that if you're a new designer or you're new whatever kind of role in fashion, if you want to have your own business, you need to really realize in yourself that you're ready for that. And I would just warn myself of that back then. No regrets.
Yes.
You know, I'm very happy, but it's been tough. It's tough. It's actually really tough now as a designer. You know, there's so much more work involved than even 15 years ago that I think people just need to prepare themselves for that. I doubt myself often, but I use it as motivation. I have been at points in my life or long periods of my life where I very much doubted myself. Now I know that doubting yourself is fine. The trick is to surround yourself with people who can fill in for your gaps. I like to take criticism, good criticism, thoughtful criticism, not just like you're fat or something like that. And I like to study it and observe it, not necessarily change what you're doing, but I think it's good to hear what other people have to say.
If you were talking to a young person at FIT right now, what would you say is the most important, unglamorous part of the fashion industry that one has to master in order to achieve success?
It's your production. Production is kind of the one thing that, like, fashion is so smoke and mirrors that that's the one thing that's never really discussed. You know, nobody thinks about that. You just think about red carpets and all of that stuff, I guess. But production is everything, you know. How much money you're making, how many units are you making, what are your shipping costs, how much does a plastic bag cost, how much is a hang tag, how many stores are you in, how much does your distributor charge you, all of those things. It's kind of a massive undertaking, super awful and unglamorous. And it takes several minds to figure it out.
How aligned is the commercial success with the creative success in your mind when you create a line?
When I build a line, we build the show collection, and then that's kind of like the guiding light. And then we take from that and build into what can be more commercial. And then out of that, we take maybe 30% as like higher fashion. And then the rest is like graphic tees, shorts, just things that anyone can wear. And another thing that I do that most other brands don't do is I build a range of price points into my line. This is another high-risk idea that has been greatly discouraged from many, many voices in the fashion industry. But I believe that you can have a high-end fashion collection while selling lower-tier merchandise. So I believe that I could have a $15,000 coat at Harrods, but also have a $100 T-shirt, available for direct-to-consumer. It's very important for me to have that because I love to design luxury. I love to design things that are expensive, not just because I want them to be expensive, but because they are using the best fabric and the best manufacturing, and they're worth every penny. But I also want to make sure that regular people can get the clothes. Like $100 for a T-shirt, like for my family, that's crazy. Like they won't even pay that. I got to give them my employee discount. But yeah, I think it's important to have a democratic approach to fashion, especially if what I'm selling is more than the apparel.
What's the argument against that?
Oh, the argument against that is it comes from a business standpoint only, and it's that the people who are buying the more expensive product don't want to be associated with the people that are buying the lower tier product. So it's a really fucked up argument. But it also goes as far as retailers, like a luxury retailer may not want to be carrying the same label that maybe a retailer 2 tiers down from him is carrying. So for me, it's very strategic in the way I build it out so that I'm doing most of my lower tier direct to consumer so that I don't have to worry about these retailers getting upset with each other.
Do you consider the brand streetwear?
I think there's a lot of streetwear influence in it. I've definitely started the brand with more of a streetwear identity. And for me, my influences and my inspiration has always been what's worn on the streets. So yeah, I think there's a lot of streetwear influence. I mean, that term I think has gotten a worse rap than it deserves.
Yeah, why do you think streetwear is treated as this sort of dirty word these days?
I think it's trend. It was such a strong trend, and you had every house designer trying to emulate streetwear, and it just became such a trend that suddenly it became like, oh, it's not so cool anymore. We better call it something else. Mm-hmm. And then you have designers that were doing streetwear, straight up streetwear, saying like, oh, I never did streetwear. This isn't streetwear. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with streetwear. I mean, what is streetwear? We're both wearing streetwear.
Yes.
I mean, we're going out onto the street. So, I mean, and I think that the good thing about streetwear is it recognized the cultural backgrounds from which so much fashion came. And, I think that's super important for fashion. And that's what I do. I recognize where baggy chinos came from, where oversized clothes came from. I recognize those, and those came from the streets. That came from streetwear. Although what the Pachucos were wearing in the 40s wasn't called streetwear at the time. Ultimately, it was streetwear.
Speaking of Ralph Lauren, they have designed the Olympic fits for the last 16 years, and it strikes me that the Olympics are coming to LA in 2028.
I want to do those fits.
If that were to be dropped into your lap, what would that look like?
Oh my gosh. It would look, it would probably look more like streetwear than like preppy clothes. I would give it a little flavor, especially in LA. The Olympics in LA, it's like this incredible cultural melting pot. And I have lots of respect for Ralph. I want to be the next Ralph in many ways. But yeah, I would love to do those Olympics. And if it's not these ones, then, one day it will.
When you say you want to be the next Ralph, what do you mean?
I want my brand to be big enough that I can touch everybody. I can touch the people that want to dress luxury and can afford to dress luxury. And I want to touch the people that shop at the outlets and at Kohl's. I want to have that reach because I believe that everybody has the right to wear badass clothes.
We live in a culture that puts an extreme premium on youth and also on overnight success. Was it more satisfying to achieve that success and to take that step at 40, do you think?
It was definitely more satisfying for me, for sure. I'm really happy with the path I took or I'm taking. And I'm really happy about it because I did things in my 30s that were like, I'm so glad I got it out of my system because I'm never going to do those things again. I'm very focused now. There's no temptation, really. But so many young people out of school have this idea that it's easier than it really is. And it is because of this like false world that we live in. There's so much falseness, especially like on our phones, and we spend all our time on our phones, that we believe that it's easier than it is. And now there are so many people trying to go into fashion, and I just see it all the time, like people thinking that they're talented, or even if they are talented, thinking, oh, they're so talented, they're going to do great. But to be honest, talent is like 5% of the game. You can be the most amazing, talented designer, and it's not going to happen unless you have all those other ingredients.
Well, to that point, do you think that your success would have been possible earlier in your life?
I don't think so. I think I would have been sidetracked. I wouldn't have the knowledge. What I did and what I always recommend to people is to get a job and work. And get it, work a job, even if it's like at Kohl's, not necessarily at Kohl's, like helping people, although that's fine too, but like if you're interested in design, get a job somewhere, even if you hate it, hate your boss. That's a great experience to have a job for a year or two where you hate your boss, because then you know how to have a job where you hate your boss. And you learn from that. But I have the good fortune of having learned a lot because I worked, for Calvin, I worked for Ralph, I worked with Kanye, I worked with all of these different types of companies that had different ways of working, and I learned about costing and production and deliveries and allocations and marketing and margins, and I learned a lot, so that by the time I went into what I'm doing, a lot of it came second nature.
You mentioned working with Kanye. What was that experience like, and what would you say you learned specifically from that?
It was good and it was bad, just like everybody else who's worked with him. But I actually, like so many other people that work with him, he's kind of, his soul is just so open that it's easy to love him. So I really enjoyed my work with him. One thing is that he really believed in like an open space to work in, which is like, it can be problematic, but it's also a very interesting way of working where you've got production and architecture and marketing and, you know, fabric people all in the same space. It's this really chaotic, amazing flow of information. I really learned about the importance of a freedom of creativity. And for an American designer, there are very few companies that do that. In fact, I, to be honest, really can't think of one, because he actually had so much money that he was able to let that creative freedom just happen, where every other company, it's like 75% business. And then you've got this 25% that's generating what the business is gonna sell. So I think it's a very American mentality for American fashion. It's a bit different in Europe.
How so?
You know, Europe has always really focused on giving the creativity like its most due respect. You know, that's why you see all the magazines from Europe are better, the shows are better, there's Paris, you know, it's a really different way of thinking. And I think if you're a designer that's fortunate enough to go to one of the houses, you know, the houses have the greatest respect for creativity. And if you're a designer at a house and you have a design team, if you're working for a house, all you're doing is creating. You're not, you know, sitting for days at a time in meetings about margins or line assortments, where any designer in New York is, you're gonna have to be doing that. And, you know, in contrast to the rest of the fashion world, everyone's afraid of taking risk right now. And Kanye was never afraid of that. It couldn't be too risky enough, you know?
Yep.
If there was risk involved, then that's what we want to do. I'm still working through my relationship with money. Money is something that I'm realizing should not be the focus of why we want to do the things we do. I think if you're somebody like me that didn't have money growing up, you really see it as the cure to everything. And there's no doubt that having money is great. It's great. But there are rewards in life that are far more fulfilling than money. Like, I'm not looking to be mega rich, but I am looking to just live a comfortable life where I can afford healthcare and maybe a car or something like that.
You mentioned, you know, that dichotomy of running a brand and being a designer and having the balance of dealing with fulfillment and shipping and margins and, you know, sourcing and all of those things with, of course, what I would describe as the fun part, the design, the inspiration. How do you manage sort of the separation of those things within your own head?
Well, I think my mind is always in like a boggle, and I'm always like spazzed out, which isn't the best thing to be. You know, what I do is I take rest days for sure, because I am someone that's like going, and I'm someone that doesn't have a work-life balance for the most part. I think that there are
Tell me about that.
Well, I think that this notion of work-life balance does not apply to everybody. I think it might apply to most people, but I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, there's so much work that has to be done that your life has to be somewhat out of balance. So the key is to enjoy the work. That's where I'm at right now. So it's a skill set, and it really goes back to having experience working other places. so that I don't have to spend as much time trying to figure out how to do something, because I already know how to make an Excel spreadsheet, and I already know how to put the formulas in and calculate, the business growth. But, at the end of the day, I'm fueled by the creative part. So that is what really, really drives me. And I make sure that there's enough time for that. And I make sure that there's enough time to do the video that I like, and take the photos that I like, and use the leather that I like, and all of those things that really, really make me feel fulfilled. And now, as my business has grown, I'm able to put people in positions to help me. So, of course, my husband helps me the most, who joined the company about 3 years ago. He actually we started business together back in 2015. And he works on the business side and the legal side and the IP side, and all of these things that are really, really intense to manage.
What is the key to maintaining the balance between your marriage and your professional partnership?
Therapy, couples therapy. Any relationship is work, right?
Certainly.
Any relationship is work. Once you get past those 3 years or 4 years, whatever, it's work, but it gets more and more beautiful year after year. You become closer to this person, you love this person in new ways, and it's really, really special.
You mentioned building a team, and in the context of your lack of work-life balance, how do you approach the management of the team, knowing your own sort of proclivities?
It goes back to the idea that we don't have to feel like we know everything and can do everything. So the key to having a successful business is knowing what things you're not that good at, and bringing people in around you that are good at those things, and being honest with them. So my team knows what I'm not the best at, and they know when to fill in, and they know when to step back and let me move forward on something. But I don't hire assholes. I'm very selective with hiring. My team is really strong and caring and loving people, and we all have the same mission. Something I believe about putting together a team or a group of people is you have all these people that come in with their own motivations, their own reason, their own purposes. And the key is to kind of find the common thread between everyone, so that everyone connects in a way that we feel strong and empowered together.
I know that, identity has been sort of a paramount idea that you've deconstructed and imbued the line with, and also been celebrated for that fact. When you talk about wanting that reach, I'm curious, does the sort of focus on identity sometimes, do you feel like people put you in a box as a result of that?
Yeah, for sure. Especially since I've taken such a strong stand on immigration rights and LGBTQ rights and equal rights. I'm a huge believer in the rights and empowerment of people of color. And I think people have really boxed me into that realm, which is fine, because those are all parts of what I do. But one of the reasons I wanted to show in Paris is because I wanted to show that the clothes I make are fantastic. They're not just good, they're fantastic. And I want the world to see that just as much as they see what I'm doing on a social justice level. Yeah, I'm a Mexican-American designer, but it doesn't mean that everything I design is going to be Mexican-American.
You've been in the industry for a few years at this point. Have you seen change over the course of that time?
I have been in the industry for a while, and after 2020, we saw a lot of change. There was Black Lives Matter, And there's like this new kind of post-COVID sexual revolution that's really exciting with the kids, you know, having new gender expression and all, you know, this really kind of new formula for living. And unfortunately, I think the excitement of all of that wasn't sincere with many, many brands and companies. And as a result of that, it became a trend. So now that, because it was a trend, just like all trends, it's got to come to an end. And then suddenly it's not so cool anymore. And I think that one of those reasons is that inside those companies, it's a lot of white men in suits. Older white men in suits.
Really?
Yeah, not as handsome as you.
Thank you.
Older white men in suits. And, you know, they're the old guard.
Yeah.
And once that trend starts to die, they're like, oh, well, let's just go back to, you know, how it was. Like, you know, skinny white girls with logos on their bags. And for that reason, it's kind of like, oh, God. And all of us, I think, are looking at fashion like, it's boring. And it's funny because fashion is like this, supposed to be this exciting, like creative driven force that really, you know, sells the dream and we all love it and it challenges our way of thinking. But right now it's just kind of, it's gotten so commercial that it's uninspiring. When I started my brand, I was already 40. I was like, guys, I think we should do something that actually means something. And our first show was during the first, you know, who administration.
He who shall not be named.
Yeah, let's not say the name. So it was the, you know, the start of kids in cages, families being broken up, and all of this was happening. And I was doing a fashion show, and I was like, oh my God, how can we, you know, talk about selling clothes when this shit is going on? So I decided to have a strong message in the show, and it was the harder show. We had kids in cages as the theme, and we told a really political message. And everyone was telling me like, oh no, you cannot do that. You know, the CFDA is gonna hate you, Anna Wintour's not gonna have you in her office or whatever. And I did it anyway. And you know, I found in that moment that I actually connected with people. And I gained a following, and people were like, okay, you know, this guy feels what I'm feeling. So after the success of that show, I began to realize that I wasn't just reflecting culture. I wasn't just reflecting what was going on, but I was able to have an effect on it. My biggest advantage as a creator is, it's a blessing, but having the ability to create for my paycheck. Because for some people like me, if I'm not creating, then I'm miserable. Like, the only time I'm truly happy is when I'm working and when I'm creating. I'm super grateful for that.
You are a back-to-back CFDA winner.
Yes.
Can we expect a three-peat?
I expect to get 3 or 4 of those. No, I mean, I think it's time we let someone else win. Although I wouldn't be mad at winning women's wear, because I won menswear designers. So I'll put that out into the universe. I want to win women's wear designer.
What are the ways in which winning an award like that are transformative to the business?
You know, it's really high impact. It's funny because I used to think like after you win the awards, it's like the 4th of July where you go and you experience this, and then the next morning you're like back at the wheel. But it really does have impact just globally for growing the business, you know, for showing in Paris. Because Paris, you know, it's hard to show in Paris. You have to go through you have to get to know a lot of people, it's very political, and then you have to be invited by the federation. So it's not like you can just go and show in Paris, like you can show in New York. But, you get that recognition and people see it and people, they like it and they kind of drink the Kool-Aid that is this fashion industry. And yeah, they embrace you. I used to believe that I could exist outside of the industry. And I used to actually think that I was so cool that I didn't need to be part of the industry. But I came to learn that it's really more effective. I can be more effective in what I want to do to be a part of the industry, to be a part of this giant working machine that is, we're all supporting each other. I'm supporting the stylists, the stylists are supporting the makeup artists, like everybody's like in it together. I have a lot of admiration for, people like Jerry Lorenzo in Fear of God, who, he really does his own thing. And I really love what he does, and I love him as a person. He's a good friend of mine. And he is not so mixed up in the fashion world.
At Super Bowl this year, you collaborated with Kendrick Lamar on a capsule collection. What was working with Kendrick like?
Well, he is fucking amazing in every way. It makes me want to cry. I cried when his last album came out, listening to it. I think he's so powerful, and working with him is incredible. I dressed his Big Steppers tour, and that was like one of the best things in my life that I ever got to do. And what I really loved about it is anytime I work with someone like him or, J Balvin or anybody that, maybe even walks in my shows, it just speaks so highly of that person because I have strong political values and I speak about queer rights and trans rights. And when these people that also have a much larger voice than I do are willing to partner with me in my messaging, it really says something about them. And, it said so much to me about Kendrick to have him have me do this collaboration with him.
What was the process of that collaboration like, and how does he work with you, and what is the exchange like?
Well, it's a lot of pictures, and then it's a lot of me sending him something to try on, and then he tries it on and he sends pictures, and then I'm like, yeah, that looks so fucking good, and he's like, oh yeah, I love it, and then we do it.
Did you guys align on a overall theme or vision for it before the pictures start going back and forth?
Yeah, he has a stylist. So for the Big Steppers tour, it was Taylor McNeil, who's an incredible stylist, and she and him put together kind of like a mood board that was like all Willy Chavarria stuff. So it was pretty easy. And then I just knew him, LA, like that's his vibe. So I just did stuff that I thought he would wear. And I knew that he wanted to wear bright colors. So we did it in bright colors. So it's kind of like Dickies looking stuff, but in like emerald green and royal blue.
What is the experience like to do a project like that and then for the first time be in the crowd watching it come to life?
Oh, I love that part. Yeah, I love that. But I love, anytime I see anyone wearing Willy Chavarria, I get really excited. I still like want to go up to people and say, hey, you know what, I designed that. I can't do that anymore though, it's too weird. But it moves me. It really moves me because for me, clothing it's so personal. And it's the thing that touches our skin and we live in it and it becomes like part of us that it's like the most intimate way to communicate with people. And if somebody likes the clothing that I make, it's the highest compliment.
What is your favorite part of the process and what is your least favorite part of the process?
Okay. My favorite part of the process is doing photo shoots or the show, because that is when it's the first time you start seeing the clothes on real people, and you're interacting with people and they tell you how it feels and you see their reactions when they put something on. It suddenly becomes personal. You know, you're not doing a mannequin or a fit model. It's like, okay, this is real. And then you start telling the stories. And that's the most beautiful part of it. I love that. I love that. And then the worst part of it, oh my God, there are a lot of really bad parts. But I'd say maybe the absolute worst is dealing with the financial part of it. You know, that's the toughest because it's so complex. I mean, a show in Paris is like, you know, if you do it on the cheap, it's like $1 million. I know, and that's a cheap one. And you got to figure out how to come up with that $1 million.
And it's essentially just a branding exercise, no?
It's marketing. That's all it is. That's all it is. You know, a lot of times people are like, oh, I got to come to your show, you know, let me come to your show. But you got to realize, like, each seat has a value of sometimes like $15,000. So whoever sits in that seat, they've got to do something to propel your brand forward financially. And that is the stuff that is so unromantic and so unenjoyable to even think about, that it's the worst part of it for me.
The brand is now 10 years old, and has there ever been a moment where you thought you might go out of business or things were on the verge of potentially jumping off the rails?
Yeah, many times. Many, many, many times. Many times it's been just this close. There have been times for months we're just like hanging by a thread. And I think faith is what carries me through. And if I don't have faith, then the people I'm working with don't have faith. Luckily, I have faith, and that's what drives me. So, I mean, any brand can go out of business. You got to be so big to not go out of business. I mean, you got to be Chanel big to not go out of business. Anyone can go out of business, but thankfully, I'm doing well right now.
Would you ever consider taking on like a strategic partnership in the way that, say, LVMH and Ami work together?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I see that, you know, in the future, for sure.
What would that change for the better for you?
Cash flow. Really, it's that simple. In order to make money, you have to have a lot of money. And in order to make a lot of money, you have to have a lot of money. For example, if I get a $5 million order at market, that's great. We just sold $5 billion. We're going to be in all these stores. You have to come up with $2.5 million to manufacture the goods. So if you don't have $2.5 million sitting in your pocket, or your parents have it or something, then you got to find a way to come up with that. So the more you grow, the more money you need. And at some point, I believe at some point in this day and age, if you don't already have a lot of money, then you've got to partner with somebody who can really help you out.
To look at that example of $5 million order, 2.5 to produce all the stuff, let's assume you ship it all and it all sells through at 100%.
Mm-hmm.
How long until you get the $5 million back into your bank account?
Good point. Up to 6 months. That's why cash flow is so important. While you're waiting for that money, and you've just shelled out the money to make it, and you've still got to pay people, you've still got to do stuff, that takes money. You've got to have a constant amount of money coming in some way.
How does it work when you're selling wholesale and items end up going for sale at a discount? Who ends up eating that margin, the brand or the department store?
Well, I think the brand gets the worst part of it, for sure. And I hate selling to people when they mark shit down. And I always tell them, or my salespeople, you know, don't mark shit down until you have to. But unfortunately, right now, there are so many clothes being made. There are so many clothes. I mean, you go to these websites and it's just like clothes, clothes, clothes. And most people are going to buy it when it's on sale. So now the buyers will buy according to knowing what they're going to mark down. You know, that's how they buy.
Really?
And what sucks about that is it's affected pricing. So pricing has gotten higher because the buyers know that they're going to sell such a certain percentage of this, maybe 50%, at sale price. So they still want to make their money at sale price. So I think that's been key in driving prices up. That and people just being greedy and, you know, seeing brands like Balenciaga who can charge $5,000 for a windbreaker or something, and everyone else saying like, oh yeah, I want to try to do that. But I really believe that things need to be priced according to their actual value, you know? That's why I do still like to do things that are, you know, maybe good quality, but not like luxury quality. So I can sell a hoodie for $250. Or I could sell a hoodie, I think I've got a hoodie that's like almost $600 or maybe $700, but it's like beautiful fabric with Pima cotton and it has amazing wash and holes and incredible print and, you know, a lot of money goes into the making of that. So my prices are relative to the make.
A lot of companies in the space now, like whether you're talking like Kith or Supreme or ALD, have completely vertically integrated sales. It's all D2C, and they don't do wholesale at all. Obviously, you've chosen to go a different path. What do you see as the upside in having this sort of split model between D2C and wholesale?
Well, you know, for me, it's I really want to continue to do luxury, which I don't know that those brands do like really high tier luxury. Maybe some, but I want to make that a big part of my business. So in order to do that at this stage, I need to position myself in like in luxury retailers so that the people who shop for luxury product, they go into those environments and, you know, they don't blink at the price tag. And it's harder to sell some of that really high tier luxury online.
You've experienced a tremendous amount of success in the first 10 years of the brand's history. What are your immediate term goals and what are your long-term goals looking forward?
My immediate term goals are to start branching out into smaller products like accessories, possibly beauty and skin, possibly. I have some conversations about that. Underwear, and we will be launching a whole category that is lower price point. That will be more of a DTC only thing. So that'll be a little bit more streetwear, a little bit more approachable for more people. And then we'll keep doing the shows and the luxury. We'll keep both of those things going. And I think that is how to endure the next few years.
You mentioned the underwear, and you caused a little bit of conversation online with the drop of the distressed underwear.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that idea?
Well, it was to create conversation online. It was so funny because the whole reason for that was to get a lot of public attention and then launch regular underwear. And what happened was those underwear sell really well. I had no idea. I didn't know that people were really going to buy it. So, because it's expensive. It's like, I think it's like $250 for a pair of like piss stain, cum stain, holes, no shit stains. That's, you know, it was too much.
Who is the distressed underwear consumer?
It's very it's very porn. It's very kink. So actually, a lot of women kind of appreciated it in a really fun way, and then a lot of probably perverted guys, I guess. Yeah, but it's fun. It's fun to do, and I like doing stuff like that that really kind of challenges, you know, challenges the way we think about stuff, and also, that is a very gay thing, dirty underwear. For those of you that don't know it, it's like a thing. I'm not necessarily I'm into it, but like it's a thing out there, and I wanted to like make a deal out of that in a time when gay identity is under oppression, and gay rights are being taken away, and we're seeing a lot of awful stuff against the gays. So I thought it would be cool to do something that really celebrates, that part of queer culture.
You have worked with Kanye. You have collaborated with Kendrick Lamar. Who is the best dressed rapper right now?
Doechii, hands down. I love her. I love her style. I love everything about her. And when she wears Willy, I'm like, oh my God, I love it so much. I hope she walks my show, by the way.
What is it about her style that you appreciate most?
She like fucks around with it. She's not trying to be anybody for that she's not. She has fun, she plays around. She came to my show in New York wearing the dirty underwear and a fucking hairnet. And was she barefoot? I feel like she was barefoot. She's so crazy. And it was like, fuck you. While everyone was like all glammed up for New York Fashion Week, she looked like she just rolled out of bed. I was like, wow, that was so cool. I love her.
Very nice. Willy, thank you so much for your time and your candor and your sense of humor.
Thank you.
This was a phenomenal conversation. I learned quite a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This was fun.